Not a lot went right for the Browns on Sunday. Lance Reisland is back this week to help us break it down. We'll talk through some X's and O's and what lies ahead for the Browns coming up next on the Locked On Browns podcast.
You are Locked On Browns, your daily Cleveland Browns podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What's up, Dog Pound? I'm Spencer German, your host of the Locked On Browns podcast. I'm proudly covering your Cleveland Browns each and every single day in the land and on the road. And Lance Reisland is back by popular demand, I would say. We'll do these conversations each week on Tuesdays. He likes to get into the tape. He's a former coach himself, so he'll give us some insight into what's working, what's not working on offense and defense. Also, special teams this week is going to be a big talking point. And then we'll talk about what's next for the Browns, looking ahead to week 3 and a matchup with the Green Bay Packers as well. And, of course, I do want to thank you for being in every day with the Locked On Browns podcast, making us your first listen every single day. Remember, you can find Cleveland Browns content with Locked On Browns every week, Monday through Friday, guaranteed. And today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Right now, new customers can bet just $5. And if your bet wins, you'll get $300 in bonus bets to use across the app. Lance, a lot of stuff to just dissect from this game, I think, just in general. Not a lot that went right, as we know, for the Browns. It was a pretty ugly game overall. But I want to start with the offensive side of the ball, which is obviously your expertise from your coaching days. And there's a lot to get into here. But, you know, the biggest thing I think right now for this unit is that they're just not putting up enough points. They are not finishing drives with scores. What are you seeing on that side of the ball specifically from an execution standpoint, an X's and O standpoint that isn't really working or is having their drive stall out? And we'll get into then after that, like what things you think they need to maybe can take advantage of, or what things are working that they can sort of maximize.
Well, the offense, like you said, it's just they're not finishing drives. However, I like to start off what they're doing well. So from week 1 to week 2, I saw against a better defensive line, the Ravens' hands, I saw up front, they had some better double teams. The Bears dancing up front were much better. And it's a small thing, but if you go in right now, the ball is rolling downhill on negativity, and you have to figure out what's going right. And what's going right is the offensive line got a little better. They weren't great, and they had a lot of problems, but inside, those tough guys got better. Now, I will say this, the tackles really struggled. The backup tackles are really struggling. Lucas and those guys are just not moving their feet, and they're really struggling. Obviously, they're dropping too many footballs. For me, the 2 best players on this offense right now are the 2 tight ends. And I do not think that Njoku's getting enough touches. And I think because of the matchup issues they have and some of the things they're dealing with, and that you need some easy yards, those matchups they can get against linebackers and safeties are where they can get these easy yards. If you go back to 23, when Flacco really checked the ball down, a lot of those plays he had in Njoku were just checkdowns, and Njoku ran after catch. And Njoku, I was to tell somebody asked me today, is he slowing down? I don't think so. I just think he needs the ball in space. He's a guy you would like everybody to be motivated, but Njoku's a guy who needs the ball early to kind of get him motivated. So those are the 2 matchups I would work moving forward, because everything else is struggling. And then obviously you're getting key turnovers. You have to end every drive in a kick. If you look at the first 10 points from the Ravens offense went 24 yards for a field goal after a big punt return. And then after a block punt, they score on a corner route where the corner, Mitchell, gets caught inside, even though his help is inside. So that's a technique thing. So again, if your defense is the key to winning games this year, and winning is important, then you got to protect that defense and be smart with the football.
Yeah, it's really well said. And speaking of protecting the football, Joe Flacco obviously did not have a great performance on that front. The interception, which he admitted after the game, was a bad decision on his part, especially for a veteran quarterback, forced the ball. He kind of said in real time he didn't think like where he threw it was going to be an issue. Like he was like, I didn't think it was intercepted. Ended up being intercepted. Then he had the fumble later on. Both those turnovers rather lead 2 points for the Ravens. What did you think of Flacco's performance overall, and how much was he hindered by the inconsistent offensive line play? Because I did notice throughout the game and going back and watching that, yes, he had some issues himself, and there's limitations to his game because he's a 40-year-old quarterback. But it did feel like the offensive line didn't help him out in a number of spots as well.
Well, I'm going to tell you, this is what I say to everybody when you don't get those chunk plays. And right now, for last couple of years, the Browns have to be perfect for 10 to 15 plays. And whether it's high school, college, or pro, Anytime you have to go over 10 plays to score every time you score. Now you can do that 2 or 3 times a game, and you want to be ball control, and that's how they're going to be successful, to keep those quarterbacks off the field, etc. But they have to be so perfect on every drive, and mistakes are going to happen. And that's what happens when you have to go and you have to get 11 guys doing the right thing. 1 or 2 guys, I tweeted out a bunch of stuff this week on just 1 guy or 2 guys doing something wrong. That's what happens in football. Then the play looks terrible, but it's really only 1 guy, and that's what happens. So not that you can't do that, and I think they do some really good things, and they've had some great long drives, but what it shows me, the offensive line, the drops, obviously, I will say this about Kevin Stefanski. If you ask him some of the calls that he made, as play callers, we all, when people are upset with play calls, we usually are too, right? So there's some things that happen that he's, so his play calls, he's going off what he watched film all week and his feel. Then you have drops, and then you have pass protection issues, and then they don't have the run game's not quite there yet. And what it comes down to is that you're just not piecing together 10 to 12 plays. You're piecing together 6, and then you get a penalty. Then you're piecing together 3 and you get an interception. So for me, it's more about the inability to create chunk plays, and you have to be perfect. It's just too hard to do over and over and over.
Yeah, I think that's well said. Along those lines too, talking about the lack of chunk plays from this team right now, I found it interesting. Like in week 1, some of the short stuff worked, and it felt like Flacco was kind of comfortable. I'm taking what the defense is giving to me. It was a lot of check downs and like flats to routes in the flat out to like Dylan Sampson, and those things were kind of working. There was a few bigger plays, but nothing too exuberant down the field. They didn't take any deep shots, which Joe Flacco was obviously known for as well. And one thing I noticed was that it felt like the Ravens, every step of the way, knew what was coming. You'd get those little flat routes out to Dylan Sampson, and somebody would come racing into the picture before the ball even got there, ready to tackle him. Lance, in some respects, does it feel like right now, and I know we're only 2 weeks into the season, but does it feel like the Browns offense has got maybe a little too predictable already, where because maybe they don't have the diversification of being able to take some of those deep shots? And I know some of this is coverage related too. So many teams these days are doing the too high safety thing where they keep everything underneath, and so that makes it easier to sort of diagnose these things. But it just felt like the Ravens knew what was coming on Sunday, and I couldn't help but wonder like if they were a little too predictable.
Well, the first week that he was fantastic, and he wasn't, you're never as good. It's always kind of in the middle, right? You're never as good as he was the first week. You're never as bad as he was this week. When you watch the film, there's some things that there will always happen. But after 40 years of football, I will tell you, most of the time when you come in and you watch the film, you're never as good and you're never as bad. You're kind of just in the middle. And I think that's where the Browns are at. So I do not think they're predictable. I do not think, though, for me, those are, and once again, I'm a little bit biased as a former play caller, but the things that work, you have to then adjust. And I don't think they did a good job of adjusting. I also don't think they're doing a good job of getting it to the guys right now with a struggling offense that can make plays for them. And for me, those guys are Fan and Njoku. Not saying other guys can't do it. I know Judkins will get rolling, but if you're looking for easy yards, if you're looking for guys who are going to win matchups and are going to consistently catch the ball right now, for me, it's those two. And Njoku's a guy who can really get you yards when the ball is in his hand. And so if they're going to work checkdowns, if they're going to work arrows, if they're going to work this short passing game, because pass protection, is struggling, then you got to work to those two. But it all, for me, in this scheme, going back to when Kevin was at Minnesota and with Cousins and all, it comes down to running the ball, because the things you're saying, you have to run. If there's too high safeties, you got to run the ball against that 6-man box. You got to run the ball, and you got to stick with it until you get that safety down in the box, and then you can take some shots over top, and that's where Flacco will be successful. So in this scheme, they've got to run the ball, and that offensive line, especially like I said, the guards in the center, those guys made progress this week. The tackles took a step back. Conklin's got to get healthy, and Dwan Jones has got to get a little nastier in the run game. But that will set up what they want. If they want to do these play action shots, it's got to happen with the run game. Everything is based in Stefanski's scheme on a power run game.
How much do you think Sunday, the results on Sunday 2 were simply about just a talent discrepancy, if you will? Because Lance, you always say to me, players over plays, right? Like players are what win you football games. And I think it's going to be pretty reasonable to go through this schedule this year for the Browns and look across the field and be like, the Browns just aren't as talented as that team. And I do think in some respects, like we'll talk about the defensive side here coming up, and obviously the special teams as well. But the defense tried to keep you in that game, but it did kind of feel like when the floodgates really opened for Baltimore, it just came down to The Browns just don't have the enough players, enough talent right now to compete with this team that is a Super Bowl contender.
Well, for me, it comes down to touches then. So I agree with you. On the offensive side of the ball, the touches have to be to the guys who can do something with it. So that, for me, that's Njoku, Fannin, Judy, Judkins. Those are the primary guys. So if you get 60 to 66, 67 snaps, those guys have to be 50% of your touches. And obviously they're not right now because Kevin is more of a system-based guy. So he's going to have to get out of that realm a little bit and get those guys touches. And for me, nowadays I call them Cooper Kupp touches. If you go back to the Super Bowl, we all knew, you've been doing football for a long time, we all knew Stafford would go in a Kupp, and they made it happen. They put him in different spots. They did different things with him. So they're going to have to do that. Now, I don't think there is some talent discrepancy, but that's always the answer when things go wrong. And I don't think there's a talent discrepancy when the Browns defense is on the ball in the game. So if the Browns defense is in the game, then they have to protect that defense. And that means, so if you look at it, so you get the first drive, they get a big punt return, they get 3 points. Punt block, they get 7 points. Interception down to the 1, they get 7 points. Return for a touchdown, they get 7 points. You got to end every drive in a kick. So anytime that Ravens offense has to go 80 or 90 yards, or the Bengals offense had to go 80 or 90 yards, they couldn't do it. And it's really hard to do, like I said earlier, go 8 to 10 plays against the defense. Now, the secondary, they're going to have to figure out some secondary stuff because Mitchell can't play press man without help. So there's some things you can do. You can play soft coverage. You can do some other things. But that's what they have to do. So as much as there is some talent discrepancy when the Browns offense is on the ball, the Browns do have some talent out in the offense. Those are the guys that need to touch it. And you need to get outside of your scheme and outside of your what you'd like to do and get those guys forced. Like my dad used to say to me, I want the ball in these. I'm not calling your offense, but these guys need to touch it. And I agree with that. And I've always you don't win with plays. You win with players. So figure out how to get those guys touches.
That's a perfect segue as you talked a little bit about the defense there. And of course, the special teams, which is kind of the elephant in the room here. We'll talk about both those phases of the game coming up next on the Locked On Browns podcast. This episode is brought to you by Mazda. Mazda crafts cars for those who do more than simply move. Mazda delivers confidence with every ride, with more IIHS Top Safety Pick Plus awards than anyone else as of August of 2025. From footwork to breathe work, athletes sweat all the details. Mazda brings this same intention to how they craft every single model of their vehicles. And with the all-wheel drive standard in every crossover SUV, you can drive with confidence through almost any season year-round. Like our players, we sweat every detail, because when you make every move count, impossible becomes irrelevant. Mazda, move and be moved. Most people can't name all their financial accounts or even what they're worth, whether it's a 401k, properties, or investments. And when you don't have the full picture, you can end up leaving money on the table. That's why there is Monarch Money. It's an all-in-one personal finance tool that brings your entire financial life together in one clean, easy-to-use interface on your laptop or your phone. Monarch does the heavy lifting for you so you can link all your accounts in minutes, see clear data visuals, get smart categorization of your spending, and finally feel in control of your money without ever touching a spreadsheet. My wife and I this summer, we were trying to get some bigger projects done around the house. We tried to take a couple trips this summer as well. We needed to get a better look at our financial picture, and that's where Monarch Money came in to help us save money. We canceled a few subscriptions that we had forgotten about, and we got the money we needed organized so we could do the things we needed to this summer. Don't let this financial opportunity slip through the cracks. Use code LOCKEDONNFL at monarchmoney.com in your browser for half off your first year. That's 50% off your first year at monarchmoney.com with code LOCKEDONNFL. Back out of here with Lance Reisland, Cleveland.com, and of course at 92 Through the Fan, where he is on the pregame show there each and every single week here for the Browns. And Lance, we talked about the offense. You set it up nicely in talking about the defense and especially that special teams unit as well, which actually is, I think, where I want to start, because you said it best, man. Like the defense, when the Ravens offense was forced to go longer down the field and march down the field on longer drives, they largely couldn't do it against this Browns defense. But it was when they were given a short field to protect that their life was made a lot harder. And in two instances, special teams in particular in this game came into play where they set the Ravens up with a short field. There was the punt return that set up their first points of the game on that field goal because they got across midfield. There was the blocked kick, of course. And they say, the special teams oftentimes becomes like the forgotten phase of the game. But as a coach, I know you preach how important that phase can be. What are you seeing right now on special teams, and how much is that costing the Browns through these first 2 weeks of the season?
Well, those are just obvious ones, right? The punt block and the punt return that set up 10 points. I'll tell you another one when Isaiah Bond's in there and he doesn't field the ball. Those yards you lose when the ball hits the ground on punt return, they're killer. So once again, now that now the offense has to go 70 yards and not 50 yards. And so those hidden yards are huge. And that's so they have to, those are things you can fix. Because if you think about it, the kicker, I got to give him credit, right? He's kicking for his job and does a great job. Bjorkes is one of the best punters. So they kicked very well. They punted very well. And they were still terrible on special teams. And some of the things they had in special teams, like when Hickman gets run over that's just poor technique, right? He's got to get square because if he gets run over, that's okay. I tell you, it's okay to get run over. That happens in football. That guy has a running start and you don't, but you can't olay him and take a side because then his momentum is not stopped. So there's some things that they got to iron out. And for me, everybody's talking about the offense. That special teams is just as much to blame. But, if you think about this defense, right? If you think about this defense, they've taken Joe Burrow. They've taken Lamar Jackson. They've taken Derrick Henry, and they've shut him down. And if you rely on that and you can say to yourself, if you can become boring, this defense can carry your team. And for me, as a coach, I am not going down. I tell everybody, and I've said every day, I'm not going down the negative train. They're closer than people think, and I truly believe that. Why? Because I think if they can protect the football and they can end drives with a kick, and it's okay to punt, and it's okay on 3rd and 9 to run the ball and punt it. And people are like, well, that's not trying to win. Well, that for me, and with this Browns team, that is trying to win. And I've actually had teams like that. And I know high school and college and pro are different. But the mentality of a football team, when you have an outstanding phase, it's called protecting that phase. And sometimes you just got to, you got to bite the bullet and have people boo because you run it on 3rd down and 9. And then you punt it and make that team go 90. Because if you do it the other way, you see what happens. And obviously they should have won that first game with the Bengals. They had a good chance to win it. This one is not on the defense. And I've had, the defense fell apart. They ran out of gas. I don't think they ran out of gas. I think what happened was the offense didn't do their part, and they didn't end every drive in a kick, and they had short fields. And you can't give short fields in the NFL. So if they can protect that defense, they're going to be in every game. And that goes for the Packers too. If they can end it in kick and not give the Packers short fields, they'll have a chance.
Yeah, I think that's well said. I don't know. I mean, your thoughts on just in general special teams with this team the last several years, but I remember when Bubba Ventrone was hired, and I think of Bubba Ventrone as one of the more respected, especially special teams coaches in this league. But he was brought in and supposed to sort of transform those units, like those phases of the game. Mike Prefer, the results just weren't there. And it seems like every year now we are talking about different things that just aren't going right. I don't know, like you say a lot of these things are correctable. I guess why do you think some of these things aren't getting corrected, though, where game after game and year after year we're still seeing similar problems with those phases of the game for the Browns?
I don't know. And I'm with you. When Bubba was brought in, he's the most sought after special teams coach. So he's had the background. I'm not sure if it's practice, how they practice. You and I watch practice every day during the summer. They work hard at it. They're organized. They know what they're doing. Obviously, is it scheme? I don't know. It seems like their schemes are very similar to what other teams are running. They're not executing. And that's the bottom line, because special teams is all about effort. And if you're not going to be good on offense, and let's be honest, they're never going to score 35 a night. But if they can punt the ball well and they can kick well, one of the things that's never talked about is they don't have any impact plays in their return game. And they haven't in years. So this offense has to be perfect, right? So every single time, there's never a big punt return. There's never a big kick return. So the offense has to go 75 to 85 yards, 10 to 12, 15 plays perfectly. With limited skill, it's just too hard to do. So they have to find impact, right? So if you think about punt return, so one of the things I would always do, and I guarantee you, if you talk to any other coaches, you win the football game 80% of the time if you block a punt. So when I was head coach and I had a phase that wasn't very good, I coached the punt block team because I'm the head coach and I'm only job on the line is yours. So I would help my punt block team. Why? Because if you block a punt, you win 8 out of every 10 football games. So there's some things they can do, and they can help this offense. They have to be really, really good, and they have to be really, really clean. And there's some things they're not doing, of course. But special teams is something that's getting a pass right now for me. And once again, I think they just got to – do they need to work on it more? Okay, because regardless of how much you work on your offense, your player, you don't have those players. You got to make sure that special teams don't cost you a football game. And for me, they've cost the Browns 2 games.
Yeah.
I know the offense has been bad, but I'm going to that special teams has just as much input in these losses.
I think the thing you said that was so brilliant there too is just the idea that there hasn't been the impact plays from that unit really the last couple of years with this team. And you're right. Like I saw the highlights of that Patriots Dolphins game where the Dolphins returned a punt for a touchdown, and then the Patriots returned the ensuing kickoff for a touchdown. And I'm like, where is that for this Browns team? Like they're not getting those plays. And that was supposed to be like the new kickoff rule was supposed to increase these things. And the Browns were finally prioritizing. Like, I know they had the bad luck with Jaheim Grant a couple years ago where he got hurt back-to-back years. So he was kind of their primary returner, but they have DeAndre Carter here now, and you're still not seeing the results, but those plays can flip a game. And it seems like far too often they're flipping the game against the Browns rather than for the Browns. And so I agree with you. Like they got to figure out a way to make those phases of the game more impactful. Let's go to the defense though, Lance, because we've hit on a few things with them, but I want to sort of dissect it a little bit more because I think you're right. Like they can be in a lot of games this year because of how good their defense is. And when there's not necessarily a talent discrepancy, when they're when that defense is on the field with other teams that they play, I think there was a lot to like from this team. And I do think in some regard, you know, when they're given these short fields and they have to defend constantly short fields and they're backed up in you know, the shadow of their own goalpost, at some point, you know, they're going to the other team's going to break through. The floodgates are going to open a little bit. But I did think there was the way that they defended Lamar Jackson and Derrick Henry, especially early on, was brilliant. There was a lot to like there. And then I get late, you saw some of the deficiencies, and I do think you saw some of the warts of the secondary and what they sort of bring to the table here, especially when a guy like Denzel was hurt yesterday. But what did you kind of see from that side of the ball, and what are some things that you want to highlight with us today?
Well, you know, you had 5 minutes left in the third quarter. You got 20-10. You're in the game. So that was the first thing. So obviously the secondary is a little bit of an issue. So the front seven is outstanding, but they found some matchups they liked with both Mitchell and Miles Harden. And I thought those guys had really good camps. Mitchell got exposed. And sometimes you get beat, especially if you're in man coverage, right? So everybody's got to understand they're not in zone coverage. They're in man. And when you're in man, it takes a slip. It takes a bad angle. For example, on the first touchdown to Walker releases inside the tight end. So he comes in motion. They're in man coverage. But the reason they knew they were in man coverage because before they motioned in, they put the tight end to the other side and Delpit bumped with him. So that immediately told Lamar Jackson man coverage. And then when they brought him in motion, he's got to know where his help is. So yes, he did get beat on that play. And there was a number of other plays that he got beat. So did Harden. But you got to know where your help is. And when you know where your help is, you got to have proper leverage with your footwork and your angle. So he got caught inside. And if you watch the play again, you'll see what's his name come over the top. But Hickman come over the top, but it was a poor angle by him. So yes, he is getting beat because he's not super talented per se. But if you're not super talented, have good angles. Now that's something that Schwartz has got to fix. And he's going to have to get outside of his norm of we're going to be in man regardless. We're going to do that. Now you can still be in man. Maybe you're in soft man. Maybe you tell Newsome and Ward, your guys are going to be in zero and the safety is going to help over top. So kind of like double, we're going to double with Harden and Mitchell and help him. You two are in zero coverage. You got those, the first two guys, whatever it is, maybe you play soft zone a little bit, but that, because, soft zone with one high hat does not change what the front seven does. So they're going to have to make an adjustment and help guys who need help because teams are going to attack that third corner. Teams are going to attack away from Ward and even Newsome. Newsome's playing very well.
Yes.
That third corner and 11 personnel is where they're going to go, and they have to make an adjustment of how they're going to help that third corner, especially when teams attack with a talented number 3.
Yeah, I thought you bring up Newsome. I thought Newsome was really good for the second straight week as an outside corner. I thought Grant Delpit had a really good game. And I thought Lance, another one of the rookies standing out, I thought Mason Graham was really good up front. He was getting double teamed a lot. Very good Ravens offensive line. And I thought he sort of held his own. And even on that first drive of the game, he was the one who kind of stalled that drive with 2 big run stops on that series as well.
Yeah, that front seven, Mason Graham, the rookies have all been outstanding, right? So Schlesinger is outstanding. Mason Graham, I always felt, and me and you and I were talking the first day when he was threw up and everybody was like, oh, he's a bust. And I've always believed watching Mason Graham, the thing about Mason Graham is when you look at him, he's not Myles Garrett. Myles Garrett never wears a shirt for a reason. As my wife says, it looks like he's smuggling pumpkins. Myles is a guy who looks fake, right? Njoku's a guy who looks fake out there. These guys are 6'5", 6'6". Mason Graham is a big guy, but he's not overly muscular, things like that. But what he is a state champ wrestler. And wrestlers are a different animal, man. Those guys are tough humans. And I never coached a bad wrestler in high school because of their toughness. Now, they might be limited athletically at times, but when those pads went on, you're getting exactly what I thought you'd get out of Mason Graham. He was number 1 on my board because of that. Because when the pads go on, he's not a guy who's going to always stuff the stat sheet, but he's a guy who's going to be a pain in the butt for offensive coordinators. And you got that, and you're right. And Isaiah McGuire is playing very well, and Wright's playing very well. And I think Myles might be playing the best he's played, especially, he's always been a great pass rusher, but Myles is playing very good against the run now. And Schlesinger's really, really good. Like you said, Delpit's very good. So they got to figure out the corner situation, and they got to not panic, and they got to not throw in the towel, and they got to believe in each other, and they got to go back. And like I was telling you before, this is my favorite time as a coach, and I'm sure it is for Stefanski as well. They got to go out and they got to prove everybody wrong, because right now you're going to prove everybody right or everybody wrong, because everybody says you stink. You prove them right or you prove them wrong, and that comes down to your practice habits and how you do things. Hopefully they're a little bit irritated and they continue to fight for each other. But that defense is the foundation of this team, and offense has to protect it.
I think that's well said. We know one of the biggest topics around this team entering week 3 is whether or not it's time for a quarterback change. How does Lance feel about that conversation? Does he think it's time? We'll talk about it coming up on the Locked On Browns podcast. The NFL season is here, and FanDuel is making sure you're ready for kickoff with a can't-miss offer. Right now, new customers can bet just $5, and if your bet wins, you'll get $300 in bonus bets to use across the app. There's nothing better than following an NFL season with FanDuel, and frankly, the best part is they have options for however you like to bet. Maybe you're a prop bet person, and you want to bet a player eclipsing a certain benchmark in a game, or maybe you want to combine that player's benchmark with a few other props, and even maybe a money line to build a same game parlay. Or you can just jump on a money line in real time as the action unfolds for your team, against your team. The options are endless. And like I said, that's what makes FanDuel so great. It's the best way to follow football throughout the entire season. Makes every game more exciting. So are you ready to play? Download the FanDuel app now by visiting FanDuel.com to get started. That's FanDuel.com to place your first $5 bet. All right, Lance, so we'll have a few ancillary questions here before we get out of here, both sort of putting the kibosh on week 2 and looking ahead to week 3 a little bit. And I'll start you off with the big one that everyone's discussing, which is Flacco obviously didn't look great on Sunday. We talked about some of the reasons for that. But is it time in your eyes to give Dillon Gabriel a shot? We saw that drive he had at the end of the game, nice touchdown throw, all those things. But is it time to make a quarterback change, you think, for the Cleveland Browns?
I'm going to say this with utter confidence. Absolutely not. And and I say this because I'm a big believer in practice. And you and I watched every single day of camp this year. And make no mistake about it, Joe Flacco was the best quarterback. Now, obviously, if the quarterback keeps making mistakes in the game, maybe you make a change, because the only change in football when things are going bad that can really impact, it's not right tackle, it's not anything, it's the quarterback position. So sometimes that just happens regardless of how things are going in practice. Now, is Dillon Gabriel up to speed? Is Dillon Gabriel, I'm a Dillon Gabriel fan, and I had him high on my board when we got to the pre-draft. So I'm super high on Dillon Gabriel. However, he did have his struggles during camp, and he had his struggles during camp when he started going live bullets. And I understand he had some nice throws at the end there. But he only threw an out. He threw a hitch, and he threw a really nice smash concept to Sampson for the touchdown. Those are outstanding, and he's going to be very good. And I think Shedeur has a chance to be very good. However, it has nothing to do with who they're playing. It has nothing to do with the toughness of their schedule. It has to do with who is performing at the highest level right now. And in practice, from what I saw leading into the season, it was Joe Flacco. Now, if Gabriel gets to the point where he's equal to Joe Flacco, or he's right there with Joe Flacco in understanding and delivering the ball on time and being accurate and making the correct run reads and getting it in and out of the huddle and all those things that takes to be an NFL quarterback, then yes, maybe there's a chance. And I don't know that, right? I can't say that. I haven't been there since, the 2 days ended. So, but for me, if he's ready to play, great. I'm not putting a guy in because I want to give him a shot. I'm not putting a guy in because I want to give him a look. And I know people don't like to hear that, but from a coach's perspective, you have to put the best people on the field to keep that locker room connected. If you're saying, well, we're going to give this guy a shot and he hasn't earned it. Now, if he's earned it and he's ready to go, then yes, then the locker room is like, you know what, this guy's right there too. Maybe we do need a change. But if you put him in there to put him in there and he hasn't really earned it, that would be a problem for the locker room. And that would be a problem, for the offense, in my opinion. Even though the offense is struggling, there has to be a reason. There's got to be a switch. And it has nothing to do with playing the Packers and the Lions and anybody else. It has to do with these are NFL guys. It doesn't matter who you play. You got to be ready to go when your number's called.
I think that's well said. I will push back a little bit on the notion, though, Lance, that it doesn't matter as much like who's on the schedule. Because I do think like the way the Browns have talked about how they want to develop these quarterbacks, I think that is running through their mind to a degree. And I'm just going to like putting a rookie out there against the Green Bay Packers, who are a bona fide Super Bowl contender. They got Micah Parsons on that defense. That doesn't feel like a situation that's advantageous to helping a young guy develop on the field. I don't think going against the Lions team on the road and hostile environment is going to be conducive to that. I don't think a rookie getting his first start in London against the Vikings is going to be conducive to that. And frankly, I don't think putting a rookie in a situation where he's got to go to Pittsburgh in another hostile environment, division opponent, for his first start makes a lot of sense either. So to me, like the first game that kind of makes sense is week 7. I get what you're saying. Like it's more about like, how is he performing? Has he got caught up to Flacco? But I do think the Browns are thinking about those other things too, because they've continued to say like they want to make sure they set both these rookies up to be successful once they eventually get to them.
Well, I will say this. That's a very fair, very fair look at it. I will, if they have a plan. Only thing that I don't like in the game of football, it's overreaction, right? We all do it. Yeah. We've all been there before, right? Joe Flacco was awesome against the Bengals. We should have won. Joe Flacco's the worst quarterback ever. We got to get the rookies in. So I would say if that's part of the plan, and so that makes sense to me, right? Who they're playing, for me, that means nothing to me. If the guy's ready to play, he's ready to play. However, if that's part of their plan and they're not making knee-jerk decisions because of what happened in the game, then I'm okay with that, right? If they're saying this is part of the plan for 6 weeks, great. But if they're not reacting or overreacting because of how good or how bad somebody played, then yeah, as long as there's a plan. The only bad plan is no plan. So whatever their plan was, whatever they thought the progress was going to be with these two, then obviously you believe in that. They're their head coach, the general manager. That's why you hire these guys. And I give those guys a lot of credit. And there's not bad coaches. There's things that go wrong. And right now things are not, the easiest thing to do is say, we're going to put a new quarterback in there. That's the easiest and the most popular guy in the world is the backup quarterback when the offense isn't playing well. That's a given. So my thing is whatever they decide, and what you're saying, whether I agree or not, that's fair. And I think as long as it's not a knee-jerk decision, then you live and die with it.
We also saw Quinshon Judkins make his debut. We haven't talked a lot about him yet. What did you see from him? I thought he, especially late in the game, came on pretty strong, 6.1 yards per carry. Had a nice 10 carries for 61 yards. It was a pretty solid performance, all things considered, and it was just the beginning. He only had 20 snaps in the game. What do you think? What did you like from Quinshon in this game? And what do you think maybe another week looks like for him as he continues to kind of get caught up on things?
Well, I think you saw the talent he has with that size, right? So I got to call it like I see it. I was not as high on everybody else on Judkins when he came out. I know you were. I know a couple other people I talked with were, and you guys, and that's why everybody's got to. That's why it's a group decision, right? And that's why because I was proven wrong. He's really, really talented. And the thing that stood out to me going out to camp and seeing him and standing next to him and saying, talking to him a little bit, is how big he is. He's a big kid, right? He's got, especially his lower body, and he's got great juice, and he can really move, and he's explosive. And I think what he gives you is that abilities where at least right now, it's like, so in my opinion, that was the worst Judkins you're going to see forever. because
Yeah.
he had one practice. He's not been playing for a while. So that's as bad as he's going to be. And he had some really nice runs. And he had even some of his runs that were 3 and 4 yards were pretty solid runs. And for me, I'm not always looking for a home run. Those will come. But for this offense to be successful, if it's 2nd and 5 or 2nd and 6, and that defense has to honor both run and pass, then you got a chance to hit a play action shot. Then you have a chance maybe to get those chunk plays you're looking for. And I really think that's what he gives this offense. He gives them home runs. He's good with gap. He's good with zone. He's good with pin and pull. He's good with all these schemes. But for me, what he gives me 2nd and 6. Everything else is bonus. Everything else is dessert for me. I just need to not be 2nd and 10 with this offense, and I got a chance to move the ball.
Lance, like 30 seconds left here. Anything you notice in the scouting report already from the Packers that you think is something the Browns can maybe take advantage of, or what challenges do they present as well?
Well, the defense is both sides are very balanced. They don't have a lot besides Micah Parsons. They're not really, they're a Super Bowl contender, but they're not overly like one guy. They're not a one guy team. They're very balanced at all levels of defense and on offense, good offensive line, receivers. So it's just a very balanced team, which what I think it makes them really special is the balance they have on both sides.
Some great stuff from Lance Reisland this week. We'll be back next week with more. I look forward to it. I hope you do as well. Thank you for joining me, as always, to talk about your favorite football team. If you like what you heard, make sure you hit that subscribe button. Make Locked On Browns your first listen every day, wherever you get your podcasts, and at the Locked On Browns YouTube channel for your second listen. You can check out Locked On NFL with 2 episodes every single day. Tyler, the Madman Rowland, gives you the shot of espresso to start your football day, and then Tony Wiggins has the barbershop to wind it all down. You can find it. You can find Locked On NFL on YouTube or wherever you get your podcasts. And, of course, you can always keep it local. Check out Locked On Cavs or Locked On Guardians. Big thanks to Lance. Big thanks to you. And I will talk to you again coming up on Wednesday with another episode of the Locked On Browns podcast. Take it easy, Cleveland.